On RT1 now, we pay a visit to Stockholm in Sweden to see a piece of Napoleonic history, one of Europe's great mansions, Rosendal.
Stockholm is an archipelago, thousands of tiny islands that make up Sweden's charming capital. This is one of Europe's most beautiful cities, with its royal palaces and grand open spaces. It's also the land of the midnight sun. Here, at the height of summer, the nights are so short that it's only dark from midnight until 3 in the morning.
And no one knows how to enjoy those long summer days better than the Swedes.
170 years ago, Crown Prince Bernadotte fancied a change of scene and built a little palace called Rosendal.
Only for the day, you understand.
After it was completed in 1826, the Crown Prince, who became King Carl Johan of Sweden, came here to have breakfast and spend the day before returning to his palace in the city to sleep. Oddly enough, the architect, Frederick Blom, actually contrived to make the palace look smaller than it really was.
It's almost like a doll's house. It consists of a centre and wings, but they're treated very simply. There's no great dome, no steep roofs, no statues or military trophies on the outside. It's just these very simple windows, a portico with no more than 4 slender columns. It's very understated.
Why was that? Why was it done in this way?
Well, I think he wanted something very different from the huge, imposing royal palace in the centre of Stockholm. He wanted a modest villa where he could retreat to, lead a pleasant country life amidst a wonderful garden.
Was he worried about the expense?
Well, I think he didn't want to put on a show outside. He didn't want to be seen to be spending a lot of money, at least to any passerby. There's a wonderful phrase by Talleyrand that only those who lived before the French Revolution knew the douceur de la vie, the sweetness of life. But I think Bernadotte knew it. And this is a house where he was very happy and he was very comfortable and everybody had a wonderful time. This was a house built for entertaining. Initially, it didn't even have a bedroom. You came here, you ate, you had picnics, you talked, you relaxed. And then later on, Queen Desiree became quite eccentric, and she never used to get up until the afternoon, and she was up all through the night, and she used to drive round Stockholm in her coach, and a room always had to be kept open here. Although it was a summer house, it had to be open even in winter and kept warm. So she would be popping in and out here all through the year, but always at night. And she used to actually go round her palaces at night with a maid whose sole function was to dress in white. And when they were outside, the bats would be attracted to the maid rather than the queen. you don't notice the detail till you're really quite close to the building. Look at the ground floor windows, for example. You can see they have these round arches, and inside is this very elaborate motif, like a lady's fan. And look at the first floor windows. You can see these flat pilasters have white capitals with palm motifs on them. And then on the wings, you can see these swags the whole way along under the cornice. And then a reminder that he's a soldier in the pediments above. You can see the laurel wreath of the victor, a reminder that he was a great general. I think he wanted to surprise everybody who came here. That what is wonderful about this building is the interior. It is, inside, the best preserved and finest empire house of the period.
Well, for a royal palace, it's not a very grand hallway, is it?
Well, exactly. It's more like a garden loggia, but it's panelled in this beautiful Swedish birch. You can see they've actually split the planks and opened them out so that the pattern is like a leaf. Here, and then down here on the dado. Another interesting point is this isn't a carpet, it's a painted floor cloth. And they laid these out all through the palace to protect the carpets. It wasn't just for the servants to walk on, the king and the royal family walked on them as well.
And what have we got through here? A rather imposing arch.
Well, this is another reminder that Bernadotte was the great general, a triumphal arch, such as we might find in the Roman Forum. But of course, it's all done in wood, because this is really finished like a yacht. Everything is built in. This half-moon staircase is built in, a seat underneath. But he wanted it to be smart, so the colour scheme is all black and gold. You can see the balusters are black and gilt, and then these wonderful chandeliers are black with these gold mounts, these gilt bronze mounts. And these were one of the best things the French made at the time. So everywhere in the house you can see these beautiful chased ormolu mounts.
With a crown at the top.
Exactly, the royal emblem once again.
Great craftsmanship.
Well, perhaps one should say beautiful carpentry, because there's no actual carving, no decoration here. It's just the way the wood is put together. If you look at it, you can see the panels are inset, the arches are inset, but you've got really quite an architectural interior simply by overlaying an arch over a panel. But it's done with great simplicity, but very cleverly done and designed by a very good carpenter who really liked his materials.
All the wood here gives the place a very special feel.
Well, exactly. You associate staircases and hallways in palaces with marble and stucco and very rich materials. But here, the use of wood, I think it's almost like a hunting lodge. Of course, many Scandinavian houses were in wood, but it gives a very masculine feel to the house, this dark wood, which I think is very appropriate for the fact it was a house designed and built for the king and used by him.
Rosendal's been very sensitively restored, hasn't it?
What's easy to forget in these old houses is just how bright the fabrics originally were. And the Scandinavians, the Swedes and the Danes have really shown Europe the way in reweaving silks, in remaking carpets, so that you actually create the original effect. So we come into this room and see it in exactly the colours, the exact colour scheme which Bernadotte wanted.
You've got to be quite careful, haven't you, not to be too heavy-handed with restoration, though.
Well, I think if you've got original fabrics, like any original material, you obviously want to conserve it if you can. But it was clear in this house from the samples which have been preserved that the carpets were very worn, very gone, and they would look wretched and miserable if they'd stayed, whereas in fact what we've got is a wonderfully united colour scheme, that you have here the turquoise silk, this wonderful effect of stripes. You've got both shiny stripes and matte stripes, and picked up again in the carpet. The carpet is turquoise and gold, and that is picked up in the wall paintings. Once again, it's the military theme. You can see this trophy at the back of the sofa and these suits of armour around the walls. They're so well painted that you actually think that they're in 3 dimensions. You have to look very closely to see that that is just pure paintwork.
And what about this young lady?
Well, this is Hebe, and she has a gold chalice of nectar in her hand, which she is handing up to Zeus, who is in the form of an eagle. This is perhaps where the family gathered to have a drink before they went into the dining room.
Drink? Did someone say drink? So it must have been quite lonely for the old king and queen if they were having a quiet supper at home, say.
Well, there was a time when the monarch would eat in solitary splendor, watched by his courtiers who were standing around him. But by the age of Bernadotte, they would have been sitting here having splendid dinner parties, as you can see by these chairs ranged around the tables with this wonderful array of glasses waiting to be filled with champagne, burgundy, and the finest claret. This room is designed in the form of a Roman military tent. Tents were very fashionable at the time. Napoleon had one at Malmaison. Now, the decoration here had entirely disappeared, but they knew exactly what it was like because they found the original upholsterer's estimate with samples of the materials attached to it. So you have here copies of the pleated silk and the red upholstered pilasters. So you get this very splendid, rich military effect. And in the center of the table, they have one of these terrific gilt bronze centerpieces. This was, if you were very grand, you were a duke, a prince, or a king, you had one of these from Paris. And they're almost like sculpture gardens, that they come complete with urns and balustrades and statues. They're complete models of architecture. And this is a particularly splendid one. And you can see at the top, they've actually put back silk flowers into the vase. And then matching it are the candlesticks and these dishes for sweets and sweetmeats. Again, all in this beautiful gilt bronze, which was the great speciality of Paris at the time.
It's a very theatrical setting, isn't it?
But of course, generals often ate in tents, and Napoleon naturally made sure that he and his generals ate in the most splendid tents that could be had. And of course, as you say, this is just a box, and it is decorated as the finest, grandest tent which any of the generals or marshals might have had on the great campaigns. And talking of campaigns, the Swedes call these Trafalgar chairs after the rope motif along the back. They're English style with cane seats, what we call Regency, with sabre legs, and they're painted black to imitate ebony. See, once again, you have these strong colors, black, gold, red and white.
You haven't seen the salt down your end at all, have you? So after dinner, it was upstairs, but not to bed then?
No, upstairs there are not bedrooms, but very grand reception rooms, the King's Saloon, and withdrawing rooms for the Queen, the Crown Prince, and the Crown Princess. And you probably noticed there are very few places in this house where you can hang a picture, so they had to make the top of the stairs into the picture gallery. And this was the age of Romanticism, when artists went outdoors to paint magnificent scenery, mountains, fjords, lakes, and as it's Scandinavia, hot geysers and springs.
At this point, if there'd been any ladies with us, there'd be a parting of the ways.
The ladies would have followed the Queen to the left, and the gentlemen would have followed the King into his saloon. And this was conceived as a tribute to the King. You can see all round the walls is this magnificent gold frieze painted with warriors, ancient warriors from Swedish mythology, so that you had a direct connection between him, the modern king, the new king, and the great kings of old. And you can see military trophies everywhere. You can see on the chandeliers, armor, shields, spears, and then above, you can see on the curtains, you can see the laurel leaves, the oak leaves in wreaths, you can see shields, you can see the helms of medieval warriors. And then around the mirrors, again, you have the bundles of faggots, which were very much a Roman emblem, with spears coming out at the top of them. And then all around them, there are oak leaves entwined with laurel leaves, and trophies again at the top. The columns in this room, interestingly, look almost as if they are either spears or lances. They have these gold mounts to hold. Of course, the great badge of courage was the lion, and therefore every piece of furniture in this room has lions' heads. The chairs, the stools, the sofas. The whole thing was conceived to show the king was a great warrior. In these rooms of Napoleonic date, as in the Regency in England, the emphasis was on very strong, bright colour. Reds, golds, and in this case, this tremendous turquoise in the floor. Everything was en suite. The idea was to make it all matching. There is only one picture in this room, and it's a portrait of Bernadotte, of course with a crown on top of the frame. But above that, in the frieze, is Odin liberating the ancient kingdom of Sweden. So you have this analogy between Bernadotte, the liberator and savior, and the savior of old.
This must be the finest room in Rosendal.
More, the finest empire room in Sweden. I feel it's the room which King Midas arrived in and turned everything to gold. The doors are gold, the wall panels, all the furniture, the chairs, the sofas, the stools, the mirror, the console table with the swans beneath, the clock, the candelabra, everything has gone to gold. But it is beautiful gilding. And it's picked up very neatly by this table here, which of course is rather contrasting in style. It's rich decoration. It might be Victoriana in England, but it's a present to Bernadotte by King Louis Philippe of France. And the picture is of the Chateau de Pau where Bernadotte was born. And of course, Bernadotte was a Napoleonic general. Napoleon had been defeated, but this present showed that the French king was a friend of the King of Sweden. One of the great features at Rosendal are the curtains, and here are the most spectacular in the house. You can see they're hung on two crossed spears, and in the center there's a flaming torch, a flaming winged torch. And these rich drapes are twisted and turned down over the spears, and then they're pinned at the sides by these beautiful golden sunflowers. And the beauty of this room, I think, is the way that light is picked up by the gilding. It's not just solid wodges of gold. It's these very beautiful reflections on the fluted pilasters, on the tables and the chairs. All the ornament picks up the gold and reflects it. It's interesting, they used the gold down below where the light was streaming in from the windows. But up above, in the ceiling, in this lantern, where there's relatively little light, it's all in white. So you get this contrast. Instead of lots of gilded cherubs in the ceiling, you have something quite plain and chaste at the top, and then this wonderfully rich effect on the walls. And the walls are painted with these inset scenes. Once again, instead of canvases, framed canvases, you've actually got murals, and these murals are done in typical neoclassical style. You can see all the figures are of gods and goddesses, idealized figures, cherubs, winged putti, angels, and these very delicate, rather Pompeian frieze decoration at the top, very stylized, with flowers and fruits, all exactly symmetrical, with swags below, and these very beautiful scrolls with one pink leaf, one blue leaf, one gold leaf, almost as if they're a series of ribbons pulled out of a conjurer's pocket. The room is dominated by this spectacular chandelier. You can see the glass beads at the bottom. What is amazing is the amount of gilt bronze in it. There are 4 tiers of candlesticks. You can see these swans, and then above them, these winged putti holding them. There's 1 tier of candles after another, all the way up, with these palm motifs, the acanthus leaves. And you can see the real craftsmanship which went into this gilt bronze. That some parts of it are shiny, and other parts are matte. If you look closely, you can see about 4 or 5 different tones of this gilt bronze. Some dark, some light, some bright, some shiny. And who would have thought, as we sat outside,